Hi everyone. Today we're going to be creating a PowerPoint presentation or slideshow using Microsoft Office 365 PowerPoint. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the college homepage, muskegoncc.edu. Once I'm there, I'm going to go ahead and log into my MyMCC. And once I'm there, I'm going to go ahead and find my campus email, which will take me to the different apps in 365 Office. I'm going to use the app launcher here, and I'm going to click it, and I'm going to go ahead and go to PowerPoint. PowerPoint's great for creating slideshow presentations. It's very, very intuitive. I'm just going to go ahead and click Create Blank Presentation and just kind of show you how easy it is to use. Okay, so first thing I want to do is I want to go ahead and create some slides. I have a slideshow presentation assignment in my class. My students only have to create about 6-7 slides. So let's do that. So I'm going to go to the Home tab here, and you're going to see a little key with a little green button here, a little green shape here. This is to create new slides. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click just to the side here and click this down arrow, which will allow me to select which slide layout I want to use. Now most of my slides are going to have titles and content, so I'm going to go with title and content, and I can do that again. I can just go to my Home tab, find the one I want, click it there. Another thing I can do if I want to save time is I can right click here and just hit duplicate slide, and I can duplicate the slide again. So let's see, so I'm going to have this is going to be what I call my welcome slide or my title slide. Alright, so then I have some information here. What about maybe one more? So I'm going to duplicate the slide here. And then on my last slide, I want it to be my thank you slide, because you always want to thank people for looking at your stuff. So we're going to put in a title slide there at the end, and I'm just going to call this my thank you slide. Now, typically in my class, I have a lot of students doing problem solution papers, so we're just going to kind of build around a sample here to demo this. So I'm going to go ahead and put, like, this may be a problem slide, so I'll just call it problem. I may even call it like, what is the problem? Whatever the problem happens to be. And I might have some details about that, and then talk about more about the problem. And then I might start talking about the solution, and then I might want to talk about how the solution works, and then I might want to talk about outcomes and costs, things like that, and then I'm right back to the thank you page, which is great. So what do I want to do when I have my PowerPoint aside from building these? Well, again, very easy to input information. Might want to start out with scope of the problem. I might talk about things like affected populations, things like that, and then maybe some other facts. Again, with the problem, I want to talk about facts and maybe some statistics in there. I don't want to overload the slides, which is something to keep in mind. I think about 3 points per slide is actually good, or 3 sentences per slide, but I also want to leave some room for some other things. Same thing with some of these other ones here. So I may have about 3 facts. I might put an explanation. I might want to put some facts in here, and then here again, facts. I'm going to talk about money facts. We're going to talk about costs. So talk about costs and implementation. Okay, so just some little things to kind of fill in there. Next thing we want to talk about under the Home tab is that we can reposition things. We can do all kinds of wonderful things. We can also dictate information just like we can with Word. So there's a lot of really good tools here. But what's going to be very, very important is actually what we put inside the slides in terms of visual stuff. So again, we talked about how to create the slides, new slides, but you can also add things like text boxes. So if I click a text box, I can put it in here. So I can put it just along the side of the slide. I can put some extra stuff in there. I can go here. I can go to the insert. I can add things like pictures. Maybe I've got like stock images that I want to see. There's like a little kid. Maybe I want to throw that in there. Whoa, too big. So we're going to size it down, but we can have it sit right there. So I don't know, not that these people are the problem. That doesn't seem okay. Let's put something else in there. All right. Let's see. Search on the web. Oh, I don't want to search on the web. Let's put in another cool picture. Stock image. What looks like a problem? Oh, I don't know. Cows. Cows can be a problem, so we're going to put this cow in there. They create so much methane, you just can't breathe. Global greenhouse gases and stuff. No, I'm just kidding. So anyway, whatever we want to put, we can put images in there. We can also insert things like we can put video in there. We can put audio. Why would you want to put audio in your slideshow? If you have like public speaking anxiety, maybe you don't like to talk a whole lot when you get in front of people. I have had students be able to convince their professors or their instructors to be able to do the PowerPoint without actually speaking, so they can pre-record the audio. And if you click on each slide, you can import that pre-recorded audio and stick it in there. So you just click through your slideshow and it has you talking, but you're not actually talking, so it kind of lessens the anxiety. So again, pro tip. You can add stock images, like we said. You can add icons, and this really great stuff called smart art. So maybe you're talking about a process here. You can put the process in there. You can kind of illustrate, how something might work step by step. There's smart art's just great. And again, you can add some other things, like you can add a chart or a graph or something like that. You can also import one from Excel if you like, hint, hint. There's just a lot of different things you can put in there. The second most important thing, aside from what's appearing in your slides and how many slides you have and their layout, is also things like the design. So there's some important factors that go into doing a great slideshow. First of all, is simple is the best. We like to call it minimalist design. What it does is it keeps a focus on your stuff and doesn't distract. So we like to say simple design. So these are very simple designs. They're really kind of easy on the eyes. There's not a lot going on there. You can add some colors and things like that, which is wonderful. There's also a designer here, so maybe you want to break it up into something like this. This will actually take what you've put into the slide and actually kind of see if it can kind of get it to work in a way that's kind of easier on the eyes. You can do something like this too, Really, really great to do things with the designer. I really like how it lays out some of these things. Maybe you want that cow, which is a big problem, to kind of be formatted a little bit better. Maybe you want them to be a little bit more pronounced, or you want things to look a little bit different. So it gives you some different options. In terms of design, again, I like some of the basic designs. I am not a big fan of things like this, where you put a lot of different, distracting objects, patterns. Not a big fan of those. Professionally, I wouldn't do that. I'd stay away from things like glints and like little, falling star looking things, or anything that can distract design wise. Simple is good. One of my favorites, aside from some of these very basic ones, is actually the wood background. I love this. I think it's nice and it's elegant, and it comes in a couple different flavors. You can do like a lighter wood, you can do a darker wood, you can do kind of this almost looks like a birch effect, or kind of like a cardstock. And then there's different offshoots in terms of the designer. You can, tinted green. You can do a lot of different things here, but it's really nice. There's also some kind of close, kind of, I don't want to say kind of very similar color styles, but you can try those out. And again, if you don't like them, you can always click undo, and that'll help you to go right back to square one. Transitions are the movements between the slides. We can add transitions, like we can fade from one slide and the other. We can push, we can wipe. I'm okay with transitions. I usually don't use them as a professional, but I am going to tell you this. The ones on top here are the safest. The ones on the bottom here, they tend to get very annoying. And They also tend to get a little more challenging for older eyes. You know, there's a visual acuity thing where you're focused in, you're watching something, and then something crazy happens on the screen. It becomes distracting. It becomes visually or even physically offensive. You want to be very careful with these types of things. Okay. All right. So yeah, watch out for those. Yeah. Animations. I never use animations, but you can do things like you can make, the title fly in when you're playing it through. You can do all kinds of different like sequenced events. I don't do those. I find that they waste time. They make me click more, and they're just not that useful. All right. With the slideshow, you can do rehearsals with the slideshow. You can present it from the beginning, from the current slide. You can use a presenter's view or present even in teams if it's like something you're giving to a group or to a class online. There's also a review here. One thing that's useful is to check the slide in terms of any kind of spelling errors, punctuation errors. There's also an accessibility function that you can use. I recommend this. You can find where you need to, do some of these things to make it more useful for visually impaired and other, how should I say, disabilities. People will be able to view it a lot better and a lot more successfully. And that can be a real important thing, because if the audience isn't understanding what you're giving them, or if they're somehow offended somehow, that can be problematic. And when I mean offended, I don't mean like you're insulting them. I mean just in terms of being able to look at things. Kind of like if you're watching a Disney movie and it shows, contains strobing, photostrobic, action, which may induce epileptic seizures, those kinds of things. And we don't really think about that. But if we want to be more kind of inclusive, we would think about using the accessibilities assistant. Anyway, when you want to turn this in, a couple of different ways. You can share it. You can copy the link. You can share it to other people. You can also download a copy. You can create a copy. You can also export it as a PDF or download as a PDF. You can also go to print and print as a PDF. You can go to print handouts or print pages with full slides, and there's lots of different ways you can do that. For our class, it's just going to be easy to just go to export, go to download as a PDF, and then that's it. It will give me a handout that has all your slides in full color, and that's easy to grade. Anyway, there you go. That's PowerPoint.